He's got a wonderful, wonderful bio here that I'm seeing. I'm seeing a number of books that you've authored. I'm also seeing that you co-founded the Tax Justice Network, that the Fair Tax Mark and Finance for the Future, and you finance and direct the Tax Research UK. You co-created. Wow, Richard, I can feel your head getting bigger and bigger here. You co-created the Green New Deal, and you remain an active member of the Green New Deal group. You are also, I haven't finished yet. I could take half an hour just to talk about you, Professor Murphy. You also are the founder director of the Corporate Accountability Network and lots more. And with no further ado, I now hand over to Professor Richard Murphy. Thank you.
Ivor, thank you. It's very good to be here. Thank you for inviting me again. And I've spoken at these events before and I've always enjoyed it. Graham spoke to me about speaking today and he asked me to speak about one of my passions, which is tax. But I said I didn't want to do that today. I asked to speak about the future of accounting education instead. There was a good reason for my request. With Professor Susan Smith, who I know is in the audience at the moment, and she's at University College London, and Jenny Rose at the University of Manchester, I have over the last few months been putting together a project called Accounting Streams. It's featured in this month's PQ magazine, to give Graham a plug, and thank you for the article, Graham. Our aim, put simply, is to transform the way in which accounting is taught to undergraduates in UK universities. Streams stands for, because all accountants like to come up with good acronyms, stakeholders, transparency, reporting and ethics, accounting for management and society. I'm going to say that again because it summarizes what we're about. Stakeholders, transparency, reporting and ethics, accounting for management and society. Now, let's stand back for a moment. Accounting is a difficult academic discipline. The practice of accounting developed long before the theory. The theory has very largely been developed by practitioners. The influence of academia on the subject is, I will be honest, open to question. And let's also be blunt, large numbers of people who come to study the subject do so with the primary goal of seeking exemptions from the professional exams of the institutes that they might one day aspire to be members of. As a result, the professional accounting institutes have a significant influence over what we teach to undergraduate students. But the result of all these influences is a slightly unhealthy mix that doesn't necessarily fulfill the potential of the undergraduate academic course. The Accounting Streams project is a reaction problem and to those issues. Susan, Jenny and I and our advisory board of 14 people, I think it is at present, reflecting people who've talked to us from over 19 academic institutions. And the students we've spoken to are all aware that there is a massive problem with the way in which accounting is now taught to undergraduates in the UK. My own experience confirms that belief. I've been a practicing chartered accountant. I was senior partner of a firm in London for some time, over a decade. I've also been an entrepreneur, a company director, and over the last 20 years, I've been much more involved with, in parallel with still being an accounting practitioner, I should say, but much more involved with being a campaigner for economic and tax justice. Along the way, I've written more about accounting than it's probably reasonable to ever do. And based upon all that experience, what I've observed is that young people are being taught in our universities things that do not necessarily help them to answer the questions that might reasonably be posed of them after they leave the academic environment. Now, I would say that's a particular problem for our students. Let me be bold and even a little risky for a chartered accountant. This is the idea of an accountant's joke coming up. I'd suggest to you that no student has ever gone to university to learn the double entry for the disposal of a fixed asset after it has been revalued and held for a number of subsequent further years, and to then report not only the double entry, but the impact that has on the reporting of both realised and unrealised reserves. And that's shocking, but I really do genuinely believe that isn't most undergraduates' ambition. And yet, I know that is being taught in final year courses at universities and being examined, and frankly, I have not the faintest idea why. Let me make another suggestion. It is that most undergraduate accounting students don't go to university to solely learn about the interests of shareholders in multinational companies. They might have been aware before they went that accountants do lots of things, and they most certainly will be again when they begin to view those job adverts and opportunities that are available to them when they leave. Accountants help SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, charities, local authorities, the government, the NHS, pension funds, so many other types of organisation. But if you look at the course materials that are available at universities, you would think that the only people of interest are large multinational companies and their shareholders. And the whole idea of our profession is to help people to maximise profits. Well, I have to tell you, I was 19 when I realised that the whole idea of profit maximisation was a load of nonsense. And I was at the time studying a joint honours degree in business economics and accountancy at the University of Southampton. I had the considerable advantage at that time over my fellow students of working simultaneously for a small firm of accountants. I had actually prepared a full set of accounts by the time I was 19. And what I knew was that the clients of this small firm had, frankly, not the faintest idea that what their profit was before we told them. What is more, and we're going to get a little techie here, they knew that they did not know, sorry, I should put that in the right context, they did not know that to maximise their profit, they were meant to equate their marginal cost and their marginal revenue. And I have to admit that I'm really pleased about that, because I will tell you that from practical experience, that is simply not true, and yet it is still what we teach to undergraduate students, and it is fundamentally wrong. Now, what I don't think we're very good at teaching to undergraduate students is something that is much more important, and that is that as accountants, our job is to actually account to everyone who has interest in an entity. That is the suppliers, the customers, the employees, its regulators, its tax authority, and civil society in all its forms, of which I've been a part for a long time in my campaigning role. All of them need to be accounted for and to by an organisation, especially if it enjoys the privilege, and it is a privilege, of limited liability. But where are all those concerns in the accounting undergraduate course? They're pretty much absent. And as a result, is it any surprise that far too little emphasis is put on accounting for the environment in so many of those courses? Not all. I know there are exceptions, but it's still not getting a proper look in. The other thing that's absent, and remissly so, is ethics. We simply don't interweave the issue of accounting ethics throughout all the materials that we teach. That is wrong. Accounting and ethics are absolutely intertwined, in my opinion. And in that sense, ethics should be intertwined in all the education that we provide and underpin the questions that we ask. And yet, that hardly happens. So, in accounting streams, our suggestion is that students are losing out as a result of the limitations and implicit assumptions inherent in the education that most of them are now getting. That education is far too narrow in its technical focus, and that choice of focus is neither explained or the background to it understood. No wonder so many students reach the end of their courses as undergraduate accountants, still wondering, in my opinion, what the heck this whole subject is really all about. Because that, unfortunately, is the question that is too often not asked. We're great on the micro issues, that double entry stuff. We're very bad on the macro issues of why are we doing this for who? So no wonder in that case, there is another problem. And that is that the accountants who go to business schools and study accounting and finance aren't the preferred choice of many employers in the accounting profession. They say, and I think they've got reason to say this, that our undergraduates have not been sufficiently intellectually challenged whilst they have been students. And that's really worrying because, well, largely because it may well be true. Learning that double entry for the disposal of a fixed asset is all sort of very clever and frankly a bit rote, but it doesn't actually ask you a big question, and nor does it require you to justify the answer. And that's what employers are looking for people to be able to do, and we're not necessarily equipping them to do that. So all this matters. Of course, it matters most of all to the people who are studying these courses, and let's not miss that point. It also matters to our universities because, as I hear from so many universities, the number of applicants to our courses is falling. And we've been a big profit centre for those universities, to bring this back to a very fundamental issue. We've made a lot of money because we're a relatively cheap course to provide with lots of students packed into lecture halls, as some people here will know. And those students are no longer wanting to turn up. The universities should be worried. But it also matters to our professional institutes because they should be concerned, because it is their demands for technical knowledge to provide exemptions from exams that are constraining us. But as a result, we're not meeting the demands from society as a whole. And that is what perhaps matters to me most of all. So what can we do about this? I mean, it's all very good moaning, but I don't want to carry on doing that. What can we do? Well, first and most importantly, we can acknowledge that the problem exists. That is what Susan, Jenny, I, and our advisory panel are all doing by setting up the Accounting Streams project. Our object is to say there is a problem and secure agreement that this is the case. Now, I wish that were easy to achieve, but I have to say that as yet I am not convinced that our professional institutes agree. For that reason alone, what we are doing is important. Second, we're adopting a solution focus to our work. We're not just saying something is wrong, although it obviously is. We're going to suggest that we know how to put it right. Now, that's not arrogant, that's also humble. We're doing it from a background of actually had a lot of teaching and real-world experience. And our inspiration for saying that we can put things right is the Core Economy project, Core Econ as it's known on the web, which was pioneered at University College London by Professor Wendy Carlin. Now, what she recognised was that about a decade ago, the undergraduate course in economics was, well, truly dire. And frankly, it still is in far too many universities. It's very often much worse than the accounting undergraduate course. That's how bad I think it truly is. But with others, Wendy Carlin set up the Core Econ project. And the aim was to rewrite the undergraduate economics textbook. But more than that, first of all, it had to be rewritten to reflect the real world and not the fantasy world of the economics faculty. But more than that, the materials that she and her colleagues wrote were made available free of charge on the web. The textbook can be downloaded. All the teaching guides can be downloaded. All the course materials can be downloaded. Everything was available free. That course is now being taught in hundreds of universities and tens of thousands of students have benefited. We want to do the same thing. We want to rewrite the undergraduate accounting course, starting with financial accounting, moving on to management accounting, starting with the first year, then moving on to the more advanced modules, then moving on to tax. Yes, I want to do that, but auditing and, dare I say it, and this is the one where we're going to get most resistance, finance, because frankly, the finance courses that are taught to undergraduate students really do not meet their needs. Their economics courses taught to undergraduate accountants, and they're not appropriate. This is a truly ambitious goal that's intended to tackle those focuses on large corporations, shareholder interests, techniques over understanding, and the absence of ethical questioning of assumptions, practices, and outcomes that I've already outlined. We're aiming to get this process going by September 2025. Again, this is a truly ambitious program. All of us have other work to do. This isn't the only job we're involved with, and we're operating on a shoestring. And I can't help but say that's partly because some of our appeals for funding have fallen on deaf ears, particularly to the ICAEW. We approached them and asked for a grant out of the £147 million that I have shown they've been enriched by audit fines paid by large firms for their failings over the last decade, which that institute has a duty to spend on the interests of the profession within society. But they decided we don't meet that criteria. I found that deeply disappointing. I think it's a shame. And they haven't said what else they're going to do with that money. If anybody else can bring pressure to bear on them to think again, that would be great, because clearly publishing in the way that we want will have a cost. But this moment, I'm also asking, and so is Susan, and so is Jenny, and so are the others involved, asking for practical support. We want to write those materials, and that requires people who can write. We are looking to put forward a textbook, and we need people to write chapters within that. If you have that skill, get in touch with us. Talk to us about how you can contribute. In addition, I'm hoping to write a parallel narrative to that course, which will relate the issues that we will address to the real-world experience of young entrepreneurs. I'm picking up here on the theme that Lord Balamoria has just talked about. We need to do this because not only are some of the people we teach going to become those young entrepreneurs, I hope, because I've done that thing, but also that they will advise them, and they therefore need to understand this. So I want to link these themes of the real world and entrepreneurship and accountancy together. And fourth, we want accountants, accounting undergraduate students to be involved in this. We'd encourage people to join Rethinking Accountancy. Why? Because that's a body of young undergraduate accountants who are trying to influence the faculties that they're being taught within to think about the issues that we want to address. So if you are an undergraduate student, have a look at what they're doing. See if you can get involved, see if you can talk to them, and feed back information to us, because we all clearly know it. The aim is to improve the long-term benefit for society from the teaching that undergraduate accountants have that prepare them for the world of work they're going to be a part of. Society, therefore, runs through this. And before I open for questions, I just want to highlight that last point and the relationship that accountants have to society, because that really drives my involvement in this. But I want to tell you a little story. During my time as a practitioner, I was quite often asked to go into companies that were in trouble, not insolvent, but in trouble with their bank or other creditors, and were having cash flow difficulties, clearly needed to be turned around before the insolvency practitioner would ever arrive at their door. And I do remember one very particular one that I went into, which had a really great part-qualified practitioner called Stan, who worked there. Stan was located with his small team at the far end of a corridor. He was just about as far away as possible as he could be from the CEO's office, the sales office, the product design office, and the offices of the people who actually got stuff out of the door. Good as Stan and his team were, and I thought they were good, they were kept out of harm's way as if they were a world apart, almost irrelevant to the functioning of the company. Was it any great surprise that it had a cash flow problem? Well, it wasn't to me. Now, Stan survived the subsequent reorganization of that company. He needed to, because he was good. Not everybody did. But Stan more than survived, because one of the things that I did while I was with that company was bring him back into the center of the team. People were required to read his management accounts and discuss them every month, and he was required to analyze and discuss them with them. We began a process of communication about accounts within the organization, and that's exactly what we want to empower people to do. Much of the world treats accounting the way that company treated Stan and his team as a bit of a technical afterthought. right now, the way we teach undergraduates does, I think, encourage that. Accounting streams is about changing that relationship between accounting and society so that organizations make better decisions using better data to make the world a better place. If we can help undergraduates understand that, then we will have achieved. And I hope that means that this might be a cause that you'll find worth supporting. Thanks a lot.